All right. Welcome back to Contacts. We are here with the first follow-up roundtable conversation with our college basketball cohort, and we are joined today by Isaac Williams, head coach at Cal State Monterey Bay, Dedrique Taylor, head coach at Cal State University Fullerton, Brandon Laird, associate head coach at Sacramento State University, and Gus Argenal, associate head coach, assistant coach at University of Arkansas. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for taking the time, and happy to have you here. I want to follow up on some things we've been getting from our listeners, so I wanted to bring you back on and do that. So we're going to dive right in, and what I want to know about is the uniqueness of this last 18 months, 2021 academic year, so to speak. How has it changed you as a coach? What's the best thing you've picked up maybe in the last few months that you are integrating into your coaching, or that you will implement and carry with you forward as you move on in your coaching life journey?
Well, I think for me, this last, I don't know, we're on 15, 16 months has been a hard one for me personally. So I've really taken time to make sure and be really intentional about reaching out to each one of our guys so they understand I'm there for them, because who knows what they might be going through. You know, with my own struggles being an old man, it's hard sometimes to relate when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and everything that might be going on with them is such a hard year. And especially for us, we didn't play. I know for me, basketball has always kind of been there for me since I was a kid. When things weren't going well at home or in class or with my girlfriend or whatever, I could always take the ball and go to the hoop, and that made everything better. I know a lot of our guys look at it that way too. So us not having a season, I wanted to make sure that they knew that their coach was something that they could reach out to and connect with, and someone that would be there for them, whatever there was going on in their place, whether it was their parents or lost jobs or them just feeling the anxiety of not having a routine or staring at the screen all day long between classes and team Zooms and everything else, and then their natural attraction to social media. I really just wanted to make sure our guys knew that I was there. So that was a huge priority. And I think it kind of stemmed from, like I said, my own personal struggles over these months, and just wanted to be more relatable, use that to be able to help them. Then kind of the second part of your question, the best thing I learned, there were so many phases. For us who didn't play, you had the phases where you were on a million Zooms trying to learn the next greatest ball screen defense from Spain or whatever, or you had the phase where you were trying to be in the best physical fitness. You had the phase where you became a chef at your house, you had the best barbecue recipes. You had all these phases. But honestly, the best thing I learned was one night, Coach George Raveling was speaking, and I felt like what he said really spoke to me personally. And that was that, stop worrying about trying to show people how smart you are and how good a coach you are, and really focus on making sure that they know that you can lead. And I thought that was huge for me, because I'm one of those people who I've always felt like sometimes, because of the way I look, people maybe assume certain things about me. And I've always been trying to prove that I can really coach, and the X's and O's is something I can do. And that, I think what Coach Rav said right there just hit me so right between the eyes. I really appreciate it. And I'm being really intentional about moving that forward with everything I do, like in our seasons and the seasons moving forward.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of what Coach Williams said in terms of just making sure that you don't get caught up in all of the minutia that tends to attract the attention of us as coaches, particularly of us as head coaches. You forget often that these guys are 18, 19, 20 years old, and they're dealing with things just as much as you are, and they don't necessarily have the emotional or mental capacity to take advantage of them or put them in their right place. They're distracted by them. They may not be distracted by them. There's all kinds of different things and people people experience different types of emotions behind different types of things. And so trying to be a little more intentional, not so much caught up in ball screen coverage as much as you are worried about where a student athlete is coming from, what's on their mind when they come in the gym, and so on and so forth. And again, they're still an emotional roller coaster. They're up, they're down, they're all around, and trying to take advantage of those things. And I think the second part is just learning to and making space for pivoting. That's probably the most important thing that we've learned, is just like, you may come up with and have the best possible plan that there is. But when you get to situations, they don't call for that, or they cause you to pivot. They cause you to scrap that plan. And now all of a sudden you have to instantaneously come up with something different that is efficient and productive in the same token. So learning to pivot, I think, is probably the number one thing that I've dealt with and that we've dealt with here at Cal State Fullerton.
I think certainly those are both really good answers for sure. I think the first thing that jumped out at me, can you hear me okay, Justin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the first thing that jumped out at me when I read the question was something I had to relearn. And it really is more of the basketball piece, where to Coach Taylor's point, you had to be super creative and you had to be ready to adapt. And that's coaching in a nutshell, though, right? I mean, there's constantly problems. You're constantly problem solving and making decisions throughout the course of the day. So I think for me and for our program, I think one of the things that we took from this past year, and maybe what I learned, though, was I had to relearn a lot of things. Like, you don't need 5 days of prep for a game sometimes. Like, you can take a game in 2 days and turn around and get your team ready. And a lot of the games this year were played back to back, kind of old school CCA style in some ways. But yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And that's fun, right? Because I think the other thing that you learned was, at the end of the day, you can take that strategy and game plan and crumple it up and throw it out. It really is about the team that just plays harder, and I think a lot of times what we learned was you can prepare really quickly for a team, and you can adapt and adjust, and you're going to be fine. You can go out and play the game on 1 day's notice and you'll be fine. At the end of the day, trusting the players' instincts, and like I said, getting them to be aggressive. In a lot of ways, it helped us, because now you're not spending as much time on the game. Sometimes we didn't even know who you were playing. I think pretty sure that Fullerton went through this a couple years, where you pick up a game on 24 hours notice. And so there's no time to game plan. There's no time to scout and report. There's no time to worry about each and every scenario. So what you're doing is you start trusting your players' instincts, and you try to get them to be as aggressive as possible. And we found out when we were able to do that, and that's not an easy task in itself, but when we were able to do that was when we were successful. So again, I think to their points, being creative, being ready to adapt, but then relearning sometimes that it's the simple things. It's about getting your team to be aggressive and getting them to trust their instincts and getting them to connect. And a lot of times those things were more important in the overall success than some of the game planning that I think we all get caught up on sometimes.
Well, I'd say the biggest thing, and I went through it with Coach Taylor at Cal State Fullerton this year, and I would say that the biggest thing for me that I take away, that I learned, that I will always think about when you think about what has gone on, is like being able to handle hard conversations that are super disappointing. And what I mean by that is just, we played 16 games total. And again, you always talk about what do you learn from a certain situation or a place or a person. And I go back to Coach Taylor. I'll speak for him. There were a lot of, we had 3 or 4 times where we're walking to get on a bus or we're getting ready to leave, and Coach has to walk into a locker room and say, guys, we can't go. We're not going to do this. And understanding how that affects everybody in the room, how important basketball, obviously life and what was going on was more important, but basketball for these young men was all they had going on in their room with their academics and how much that affected them. So like really grasping and again, as an assistant coach, looking at a head coach, trying to be supportive when you walk in there, knowing you have to deliver bad news and how you do it gracefully. I thought coach handled it as good as you could possibly handle it. And we were in a tough situation, but that's something that I'll understanding your group throughout a year, the like where the team is in terms of how they're feeling about the season and really catering to that and helping them understand that and communicating to that was the biggest thing for me. And something that, again, if you can get through that portion of it, then when it comes to a regular season, you're having a normal year and playing games and there isn't this whole pandemic going on, be a lot easier. But I learned a ton from that side of it.
So starting back with what Isaac started with, leadership, pivoting, adaptability, having beginner's mind, and rethinking how you do things, and then how to have difficult conversations. I'd like to jump from there to this idea of leadership and wondering specifically, what do the best leaders in your program do that separate them from their teammates? And how in some of these realizations you've had this year and how important leadership has become at your level, because this was hard for adults, let alone the student athletes. How do you model that? And how do you get them to subscribe to what you're trying to model and what you expect the core values to be? How does that play out? And what are your best practices and ideas you have for that? We start with Coach Laird this time.
Okay, well, some of that was, I got muted through some of that, but I'll do my best to try and answer. I'm pretty sure I heard the first part about what do the leaders in the program do better than everyone else, and then how do we model it and teach it? Is that?
Yeah, basically, because what came out of the first round was the importance of leadership as an adult, the importance of adaptability, and the understanding that you're constantly reflecting on how you do things to get better at it, having beginner's mind, right? And so from that question and those themes, what you just said, right? What do the leaders in your program do better than everybody else? And then how do you model and get people to buy into those core concepts?
Yeah. Good question. Got to really think about that one. What do the good players and the leaders do better than everyone else? They produce consistently. And it's not just production on the court, but it's the consistency in terms of how they show up every day and the consistency of their emotions and the consistency of how they work and the consistency of how they receive correction and the consistency of, I think what Coach Isaac had said earlier, the intentional purpose in terms of what they work with. And as coaches, we'd love to get an entire team that works with an intent and a purpose every single day. But the reality is, that's going to come most of the time from the leaders. Now, again, I would say what separates the good leaders from the great leaders is the ability then to inspire others and pull them along and finding out what's going to make each of their other teammates tick in order to pulling them along, right? Because Coach Klein, you may respond differently than Coach Argenal. So as a leader, I have to be emotionally in tune with you and try to figure that part out. So I think, again, I would say the really great leaders that we've had, they bring it every day in terms of their consistency. They're really intentional in terms of how they perform, but they're emotionally connected to their teammates. And that emotional connection allows them to lead them better. I think as coaches, well, how do we try to teach that and model that to the entire team? Was that the second question, Justin?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
If you're identifying those as the characteristics that your best leaders do better than everyone else, how do you, like you said, if we had this whole team of these guys, well, how do you get the whole team of those guys?
Right. I was listening to Steve Kerr was on a podcast with Pete Carroll a couple weeks ago. That was really, really good. And Steve Kerr, I'm going to steal this from him, right? He had talked to Coach Carroll about creating his coaching philosophy. This is right when he got hired with the Warriors. He went up and spent a couple days with Coach Carroll watching the Seahawks practice. And Coach Carroll said, well, what is your coaching philosophy? And Steve Kerr started talking about all the X's and O's and everything he wanted to do. And Coach Carroll stopped him and said, no, what's important to you as a human being, as a person? What are the things that you're passionate about as a leader? And that really stopped and made Steve Kerr think about it. And he went home that night. I went back to the hotel and wrote down 4 or 5 things. I think it was empathy and joy, maybe selflessness, and one more. I don't remember exactly. And he came back the next day, and Coach Carroll said, okay, what did you come up with? And he read the list, and he said, okay, now here's your challenge. You have to build that into every one of your team interactions. So your practices, your team meetings, your scouting reports, meaning Steve Kerr's core values, the joy, the empathy, the gratefulness. Again, I don't remember exactly what the 4 were. And so again, I think that's the challenge as coaches is for us. If it's important, then we practice it, we chart it, we report it, we talk about it, and we reference it constantly. I think the biggest challenge is probably limiting that thing to 3 or 4 core values or 3 or 4 pillars, and then doing your best to lead by example as coaches, pass that leadership onto the captain's council or whatever you have on your group, and then hopefully it emanates to the rest of the group. And then every single day in all of your meetings, your scouting reports, your team meetings, your captain's meetings, and ultimately your practice in your games, your team start kind of subconsciously reflecting those things because that's what they practice every day. Again, and I think the challenge then becomes, well, how do you practice empathy in practice? How do you practice joy in practice? How do you practice gratefulness in practice? How do you practice competitive pride in practice? I think that's the million-dollar question for all of us to try to figure out in terms of how we display those characteristics to our group. And that can be done in a million different ways. And I would say whatever is genuine and authentic to our leadership style is probably the best approach to that.
Love that. Thanks. Let's go the same order. Gus?
I would say that the biggest thing when I talk about leadership and leaders, and obviously I played with Coach Laird, so I saw him as a player leader. I've worked with Coach Taylor. I haven't worked with Coach Williams, but I know the type of leader he is because of the program that he has. But I think as a player and what you want from your guys, I think the leaders draw a line in the sand, like constantly. And I think that they move it and they make sure that that's not crossed. I think that comes from players the most. Like I'll give you an example of playing for Coach Laird or playing with Coach Laird as a player, being a leader. There were teams in our league that we were not going to lose to. And when we were ever upset or when we didn't, there was a line that was drawn in the sand. There was an expectation that like everybody knew, no matter if Coach Laird was the best player, the worst player, he was our leader. We were going to follow his lead. We don't do this. We do this. There's just a hard line. And I think that, like, that's what they do. That's what they reciprocate. They make you believe that. I think with coaches, it's the exact same thing. Working with Coach Taylor, there's a line in the sand that you're going to have this or you're not going to have this. You're going to be this or you're not. It's going to be expected every single day. When we walk on the floor, you're in charge of your space. Coach would always say that. Like, rent is due every single day. You're going to have to bring it every single day. And again, if you don't, like, well, there's a day off. We're taking your money for today. You didn't bring it. So there's just that expectation that constantly was driven in. And I think that the great players and great leaders in your program, the culture that feeds down to your from the coaches to the players. And I think the biggest thing obviously is really simple. Like Coach Laird said, you can't be, great at anything if you're trying to be great at every single thing. So just like in basketball, we know that there's 2 or 3 things we want to be really good at. And when I worked for Coach Taylor, he had 2 or 3 things. I'm not going to give away the secrets, but there's 2 or 3 things that we talked about. And if you did these things and you didn't do them, you weren't going to play. Now, same thing as a player, like, hey, we do this. This is how we play. When I played at UC Davis with Coach Laird, we were going to be as tough. We were going to execute. We were going to be disciplined, like, all the time. That was us. So again, keeping it simple. And then again, having the translation from top to bottom, which, like Coach Laird said, it does come out every single day in everything you do. You can't say, oh, I want to be high energy. And then we walk out here and we don't get excited for success, or we don't enjoy being around each other. And last year was very hard. That's one thing I will go back to your first question, is it was really hard to enjoy, like, moments, because we could barely even, like, hug each other at times. Crazy, as dumb as that sounds, there were times where you don't even have a team meal. We had 0 team meals last year. We dropped off meals at our guys' door. So after a game, suddenly now it was a free-for-all, and we were living life. I mean, for about 10 seconds, 30 seconds after a game, really embracing it. But I think just sticking to it, I jumped off subject here, but I just thinking and keeping it simple, and then your players draw that line along with the coaches. So.
Yeah, the unbelievable points. I couldn't agree more. I think Coach Laird, I'm not going to probably say it quite as eloquently as he did, but at the end of the day, leaders, they show up and they're consistent. And, we all have had those guys, and probably 80% of all the teams have split personality guys. One day it's Clarence, the next day it's Terrence, and you don't know which one you're going to get. You just hope that you get the right one on the right day, and they show up against the good teams. But leaders, they bring it. You know what you're getting every single day, and it'd be nice. Sounds simple. It'd be nice if everybody was like that. And if we're being honest with ourselves, there's a lot of coaches like that too. And you have to fight with yourself to make sure that you're bringing the energy, and that's the part of modeling that comes from the top down. I think when you show up and you have a passion for being in the gym, or being in the film room, or talking about academics, or checking in with them about their parents, and they see that every single day, I think that's the way that you can model it. I don't really think there's any real magic. I think just like when you're a parent, your kids are probably not going to be like how you tell them to be. They're going to be what you show them, and I think that's a lot about coaching. And I think another part of what I learned during this time is definitely when you find somebody who does show up every day, put them under your wing and make sure that you teach them the nuance of what leadership looks like. And it may not be the kid that you think. It might not be the best player. It might not be might be the guy who doesn't even get into the game. But if that guy shows up and he's the 15th guy on the roster, he'll gain everybody else's respect because of that. And I think you got to make sure you mentor that, and you nurture it, and you encourage it, and you hope that other people follow along.
That's one of the drawbacks of going last. Those three guys eloquently said what I was going to say. And I think the other problem is you got three Davis guys that played at Davis on this call. So we think life alike. So I'm not gonna regurgitate what's already said. I'm gonna be very intentional in terms of Coach Laird started it off, and every coach here hit it. Consistency. Everybody wants to know, do you have favorites? Do you play favorites? Yeah, I do. I play favorites to the guys that show up, and they show up every single day a certain type of way. And we've all said it here, and I'm going to say it again. It's not the best player. It's who shows up and gives the most energy, who shows up and gives the most effort, who shows up and gives the most of the intangibles, because in one way or other, we're all talented. They're all talented. But if that talent doesn't work together, then that talent is not as good at the end of the day. And so being consistent from that standpoint is really, really important. And you asked about how we model it in terms of leadership. And it's just that for me, and I tell my guys, I literally try to wake up every morning before my feet hit the ground. I already got my boxing gloves on, and I'm fighting for my culture. I'm fighting for what I believe in. I'm fighting for the simple thing of showing up. And our theme this year was embrace the suck, which is something that I don't think people really, really do. It's like, hey, we're in a bad situation. COVID's a really bad situation. But how do you still find a way to be productive in spite of that? Are you going to sit home and you're going to be 20 pounds, 30 pounds? Or, are you going to go outside and do some exercise? Or are you going to get better in certain areas on the floor? You have to, in my opinion. I think the better the more you acknowledge that it's a bad situation, you can find a way to be productive in spite of that. And so it's something that I try to model, and I try to get our guys to help me model those things, but they also model things for me. But I was on a call earlier, just a minute ago, and I heard, I can't even think of her name, but she talked about leadership and talked about how people follow genuine leaders, and authenticity is really, really, really important. And those are really, really important to me. Like, everybody talks to me and they say, oh, you keep things real. You're so real. No, I'm telling the truth. This sucks. It sucks. I know it sucks. So let's embrace it. but let's still be productive because of it. And so trying to model those things day in and day out is something that's important. For instance, today, everybody's doing their workouts and so on and so forth, and everybody's recruiting. And I just said this to a coach. I said, hey man, I'm tired. I don't have the necessary energy to take our team and pour into them the way that I would like. So what did we do? We played today. We played 5-on-5, which I don't like. I'm not a big fan of because of the selfishness that reeks sometimes. But today we played, and I was able to coach our guys through some of the things that I saw, some of the mistakes. And yeah, we still laughed. Guys got dunked on. And I was the first person to run around the gym like hooting and hollering because those guys gave me energy, and I needed that today. And I was appreciative of their effort, of their energy. And I was trying to reward them by saying that I appreciated and acknowledging that fact.
So good. And on this type of format, we don't have time to really touch on all the different things that came up, but we'll lead with that consistency piece that you wrapped up in a bow there, Coach. And we're going to let you go first on this next one because it goes right into that idea. And are there things in your program that are vitamins? And what I mean by that, some you do every day with the idea that, hey, we're going to get better at this. And over the course of the season, over the course of 4 years, compounding interest is just going to take care of the development piece. Maybe it's the first 30 minutes of practice. It might be film study, whatever it is you do in your program. But are there things, and I know there are things. Can you share something specific that you have found adds an exponential value to the growth of the program that you just always do? And it might change every year depending on the needs of your team. But this idea of basketball specific vitamins that you do, since this is a group of basketball coaches.
Yeah, I think Gus mentioned this earlier in terms of, not giving away my secrets. Hell, I steal from everybody. I stole from these three guys. I got literally a page full of notes just from this conversation. So the vitamins would be, what Gus does with our group. We were very fortunate to have his presence, but I thought finishing around the rim was something that guys don't do very well. They don't practice those things. I thought passing is a lost art. You think about how many times a guy passes or takes another player or his teammate out of a shot because he gives them a pass that's not necessarily in their shooting pocket. And our staff, they laugh at me, and I think it's the best analogy you could possibly mention. And Gus knows what I'm going to say, but you talk about FedEx and you talk about UPS, right? They deliver packages on your doorstep. So the best things about passing the ball is being able to deliver a pass better than FedEx, better than UPS. So where all a guy has to do is basically be able to shoot it or catch it and score it. And that's something that is intentional with the way that you practice. If you practice throwing the ball over to the gym, then when you get in the game, what can you expect? You're going to throw it all over the gym. But if you practice good pocket passes or those things that are important, then they show themselves up in the game. I think those would be considered daily vitamins. And then shooting would be the last. I would say guys don't shoot intentionally enough. We just came back from watching the AAU basketball and I'm thinking, I'm watching these guys play and I'm thinking to myself, now, if I go to that young fella's workout, quote unquote workout, and I just watch and I'm saying to myself, how many times did he practice that shot that he just airballed? And then he's looking at his hands and he's saying, man, please, you didn't practice that. You didn't practice going to your left and shooting a left-hand runner from the three-point line. Guys don't do that. But they expect themselves to be able to do that in the game. And so then I walk out of the gym and I'm like, I hate everybody. Why do I hate everybody? It's not because of their talent. It's because they don't do what they practice. And then that word consistently. Do it consistently. If you're the hardest runner, Jeff Van Gundy says this, and if you listen to him the last series, I think with the Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee's, he talks about the 3 R's. He talks about running, rebounding, and rolling. And if you say that to one of your guys, they'll look at you like, Coach, you're stupid. But guys are literally signing multi-million-dollar contracts because they do those three things, and they do them really, 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 really well. And DeAndre Ayton happens to be the guy that he's talking about. He was super talented, but when he really became specific with his game and really became a roller, a runner, and a rebounder, you probably are going to start your franchise with him. So to answer the question, the daily vitamins, I think I hit them already: passing, dribbling, and shooting. Those three things. If we can be really, really, really effective and efficient in those three areas, I think we can be really good. Am I supposed to pass it to somebody? You're on mute.
Still on mute.
Go ahead, Coach Williams. He don't know.
Yeah, we just have to pick up for him. If Coach, anybody else wants to host this event, we can just slide him right out of the venue. Everybody's going to talk about like fundamental basketball. I think we all are going to have. We work really hard on finishing. I agree with Coach Taylor. If you like study why people do the ball screen coverages they do, is because they know that guards can't finish those shots at the rim over contest, and that's a simple fact. So I think we do all those same things. But I think one thing that's probably specific to us is we every single day we tell our guys basketball is the thinking man's game. And I think the higher you go, the smarter you have to be. And I don't mean you got to be able to recite poetry or, do all sorts of math equations. I mean like basketball IQ. And I think that's like asking them the question, why? Why did you decide to make this pass? Why did you make this decision? Why did you stunt off of the best shooter towards a non-shooter? Why are you, whatever that you're doing, why? And then wait for the answer and require them to give you a legitimate answer. And I think that's something that is really important. A single day doesn't go by where we don't ask that question multiple times. And I'm sure our guys get frustrated, especially when they don't know, because nobody wants to be put on the spot because they don't know why they did whatever they did. But I think it's important for them to think about it and understand that the smartest teams, obviously there's a level of talent amongst all winning teams, and there's no getting around that. First credit always belongs to the players. But I think the next, most important thing when it comes to winning is that you got smart guys, and smart people don't break down. They don't beat themselves. And I think we try really hard to just get them thinking that way. Now, when you have a bunch of freshmen, you have a bunch of sophomores, they're just not smart by nature. But hopefully by the time they get to be juniors and they're playing the third, fourth, fifth year, and they're smart, things get a lot simpler. And I think that's the part that I really enjoy. Is I don't like teaching patterns or absolutes. I want people to be able to figure things out on their own. And I think we tell them all right, like mess it up, throw it into the crowd, overhelp, get beat off the dribble, but challenge yourself, figure out why it went wrong. And then when I ask you why, give me a legitimate answer, and then let's learn from whatever happened just right there and then fix it for the next time. And I think once they have that, they're more apt to be able to keep that knowledge and then repeat it constantly and consistently. So I think that's, if we're talking about vitamins, I know, again, we'll all say the same things, but I think for us, that's a big part of our program and something that is fun for me too.
B, are you going?
Who's running this show?
Go ahead, Gus. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. I just jumped in there. I didn't want to jump the gun here, but we're left, like we said, we're left on an island on this thing now. So I would say that the vitamins are very specific to what your program wants to emphasize. Like Coach Taylor just said, he wants to shoot wide open threes. He wants to be a great attacking the rim team, finishing at the paint. And he also wants to make sure that when you drive and kick, you're getting those. Those are like the three things. Those are the basics. He wants to be attacking. He wants to shoot good shots, and he wants to have an unselfish team. So we worked on those three things constantly. And so I think you have to be like, maybe a team doesn't care as much about shooting, and it's more about, we want to be more attacking and slashing, whatever it may be. That maybe it's a vitamin is literally teaching the technique of offensive rebounding, like certain teams in our league. Like maybe that's a vitamin that you really have to train somebody on doing. So I think it's important to what you want. And I would say that on a different note as to what the vitamin is, like your skill set, I would say that something that I've gotten that, because guys don't want to work as hard as you want them to work for a long period of time, we just started doing here 7 minutes before and 7 minutes after, as hard as you can possibly go. Or like 6 minutes, 5 minutes. And you have to go 5 minutes at your group or with a coach or with a manager, whatever it is, 5 minutes of whatever that skill is that your head coach picks for that guy, and you got to go for 5 minutes. It's not like just catch and shooting. You're doing that skill, and maybe it's going at a speed that they're not comfortable. So I think that's probably the biggest vitamin, that the emphasis of hard pace, game-like routine of passing, shooting, dribbling, I don't know, screening and showing your hands to the ball, whatever it is. But so like cutting that time and working on the vitamin for a short amount of time, but a real vitamin, not a placebo, an actual vitamin. Just to put it that way.
We're big on fundamentals with the Hornets. That's Coach Katz's cup of tea, but fundamental 15 every day. And we're talking fundamentals. I mean, it's mic and drill, it's chest passes, it's stride stops, it's dribbling. I mean, literally, we go stations. Now, we want pace, we want tempo, and we want the guys sweating. It's not warm-up time, I think to Gus's point. You want them. We tell them, in our ball handling drills, we want them losing the ball. We want them uncomfortable. And chest passes, we want them boom on time on target. Coach Taylor's points. So again, I don't think there's anything different, but a big time emphasis on fundamentals. As we were talking, one thing we started doing last year, and we did it every day at the end of our fundamental 15. Coach Katz created a drill called communication passing, where you're just, you're passing, whether it's chest pass, bounce pass, and there's instructions with it, which line to run to after you pass. And it's one of those things that you find out really quickly early on in practice, who's engaged, who's not engaged, who's following instructions, who's not following instructions. And it got me back to the good old days of the 4-man weave. And so we reintroduced the 4-man weave into our practice last year, right at the end of our fundamental 15, to kind of set the tone of, hey, when the fundamental 15's done, like you need to be sweating, you need to be loose, you got to be ready to go. And again, the 4-man weave is Coach Williams' old drill that requires attention to detail. It requires on time, on target passes. It requires finishing. It requires everyone counting numbers. And really, if you got 15 guys on your team, 1 through 15 have to be on point to get the drill done. And if you don't get it done, it's like, oh man, here we go. And you can start seeing coach's blood boil, and it gets your leaders engaged, and it sets the tone of, hey, let's stop messing around and let's get this right. And then when you get it right, there's a celebration, right? There's some joy, and there's a sense of accomplishment of all 15 guys working together. So if I was to say what one daily vitamin from a basketball perspective is something along the lines of the 4-man weave that engages your entire team early on in practice and sets a tone of, are we ready to go or not? And I think that was really huge. And we're going to stick with it for sure.
If I could just jump right back in, there's a great story. You guys can all steal it. But when I graduated college in LaGrande, Oregon, Eastern Oregon University, go Mounties, was the same year that the Chicago Bulls had finished the 6th championship. And that summer there was a lockout. Phil Jackson famously was not on the team. Well, Tex Winters, 50-year Division I head coach or NBA assistant at that point, and inventor of the triangle offense, his wife was from LaGrande, Oregon. So it was locked out. Nobody was getting hired, but Tim Floyd was going to be the next coach of the Chicago Bulls. So Tim Floyd, Bill Cartwright, Tex Winter, the staff, Woolridge, They all came to LeGrand. I think this is pretty illegal, so hopefully they don't all get in trouble however many years later. But they all came to LeGrand and they practiced with the players that were coming back the next year. I couldn't practice because technically I was an NBA prospect by their rules. Just so you know, that summer was my summer to shine, but it didn't work out. I was the film guy instead. So anyway, Tex Winters runs the practice because Tim Floyd wants to see how his best transition defense will work if they want to run the triangle offense and how that will go. So Tex runs the practice. He's implementing the triangle in our gym, Quinn Coliseum. And it starts with everybody on the baseline in pairs of twos. And he's working on jump stops, left foot, front pivot, right foot, reverse pivot, how to hand off the ball. It kind of seamlessly goes into the pinch post and how they do their handoffs. And I'm up on the top of the deal going, man, this is so corny. Like, I don't even understand what's going on. And we have a barbecue later that night at Coach's house. Everybody's in there. And I have to ask, it's driving me. I said, Coach Winters, come on, man. You're telling me Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman were working on right foot reverse pivot? And he looked me dead in the face and said, every day. And so each year when I have a new group, I tell them the story. Now that the documentary came on ESPN, it'll be even better story this year. So I think it speaks to how important those little things are, and everybody touched on it. But I just think that's an amazing thing, and it was an eye opener for me. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Love that. Thanks for putting a pin on that one, Coach. Gus, you get to start on this next one, and this will be our last one unless we have a little rapid fire at the end. Recently, Monty Williams was recorded making the comment to his team the other night that everything you want is on the other side of hard. How does that land for you in regards to coaching, teaching, life, wisdom you're trying to impart on your athletes, your children, whatever? How does that land for you, and where do you go with that?
I would say that it goes back to my senior year playing at UC Davis. I would talk about Gary Stewart. And I would say that I always go back to, I thought that I was in the best shape of my life this year, that year, since I was a junior in high school. And I remember that, and this is more on a physical conditioning, mental side of it, that Coach Stewart pushed us to a point that like, I didn't know I could go to. And I think he was probably trying to get rid of all of us because we weren't very good, and he was really smart to do that. But I always tell him, and I appreciate him for, he took great pride in not wanting to drop the torch at UC Davis. And so I think that part of that pressure was forcing us to be a lot better than we were, or we thought we could be, and really rallying around that. And he made us do things that we didn't think we could do. And I think that part of the job of a coach, of a person that's in leadership, is to try to get people to become the person they want to become when they don't want to do the things that they want to do to get to that point. And you have to do that constantly, and you have to remind them. And so I think that for me, I go back to as a player, like I always think about that as I did not know that I could run for an hour, swim for an hour, lift weights for an hour, and then have him chew me out the whole time doing it. And at the end of our year, you know, there was a great, and I say this very honestly, a very close love and bond between men, people, brotherhood. And that was very special. So I think pushing people, now that was a physical, but it was also mental, and it was teaching you can do more than you think you can do. And I think that was, you know, as much or more than I ever had before. And that showed how sports could make you do more than you can. And now you take it and you say, I can do more as a dad. I'm not tired. Like Coach Taylor just said, and I'll give you an example. We were on the road here. We're in a gym of thousands of players, hundreds of players. We got hundreds of coaches, and I walk in the gym and I don't know Coach Taylor's there, and I turn the corner and Coach Taylor's got his two daughters playing Uno on the bench. And why I bring that up is, as parents, as people, we can always try to do more and be better dads, be better husbands, be better whatever it is. And so like, that's an example of like, he didn't have to bring his daughters there. He could have had them sit at the hotel or at their house or whatever it is, but that's like trying to do that. And I think that the sport and pushing yourself can help you learn a lot about who you are, and you can help young men realize that they're not just basketball players. They're really good people. They can be mentors and leaders. And we do that through the sport.
Let's come back to me. Okay. Come on, Gus. You know, those Davis practices were nothing like those 6-hour marathons you were having at De La Salle. Now, don't try to fool us. I'm just playing.
I forgot. I blacked out during those years in high school. So I forgot about
it. Much respect to the Spartans. Much respect to Monty Williams. He's mic'd up, and I feel like he's just dropping nuggets of wisdom all over the place.
Hey, B, can you say that again? The internet's getting a little loose here. I want to get that on wax. That was my bad. Go ahead and say that again where you started with much respect to Monty Williams.
Yeah, so I mean, he's an incredible human being and an incredible coach and an incredible leader. And one of the main reasons I have enjoyed watching this playoff run so much is hearing him mic'd up. And I feel like he's just dropping coaching nuggets of wisdom all over the place. And I think you really see with him a coach that has connected with his players and connected with them in a very genuine way. And I think we're all trying to, and it doesn't always work like this, right? But I think in some ways we're all trying to have that type of connection with our players where you love them and you care about them, but at the same time you can be very truthful with them. So I think having love and truth and that balance is very important, because then you can have those hard conversations. And I think the players then know at that point that you're coming from a genuine point. And when I watch Monty in these playoffs and I see him interacting with Chris Paul and Booker and Ayton and really everybody, I think there's a lot of truth in terms of, hey, this is what we need to do to win this game. And there's a lot of faith and belief and love that his guys can get it done and that they'll get it done together. So I think always having the ability to address that elephant in the room and having someone, I think I heard someone call it a rat on the desk the other day. But I think as coaches having the ability to, was that you, Coach Taylor? It might've been you, actually. Did you ever use that saying? All right. Having the ability to address the elephant in the room or the rat on the desk. And then I think being able to do that truthfully and with love, so the guys know that you're coming from a good spot, really, I think makes those hard conversations a lot more challenging. And I would certainly say, I mean, I love the embrace the suck. And, I think taking that tone and making it a challenge and making it an adventure and making it part of your team philosophy is certainly something that I think is awesome and fun as well. So I have to pick your brain on that a little bit more, Coach Taylor, because I think at the end of the day, you got to, during the long seasons, you have to be creative. And at times you really have to embrace that suck. And times you have to be really truthful and honest about where you are. But if it's all backed up with love, I think you got a good chance to be successful. And I think Monty Williams has certainly shown that with the Suns.
I'll jump in. Definitely he is. And I want to use some of the words that you use and be more intentional with describing this thing hard. What Monty said, what Coach Williams said, I think is really, really important. Hard is what it is. We all want things and we want them right now, and we don't always understand how important hard plays into that. And what it does is it makes you appreciate when you do get through hard, when you do accomplish something that was hard, understanding that and appreciating that. And something Coach Laird said, I think he said, truth. He was talking about truth. And to me, truth is love. If you love a person, you are going to lead with the truth. And they're going to trust that you are coming from a space of love by telling them the truth. And oftentimes us as coaches, we get a bad badge, if you will, because we do tell the truth. And the truth may lead to a player transferring, or it may lead to, a player disagreeing with you and your philosophy. And quite frankly, I don't necessarily, I don't care. I hate to say that, but I don't. I'd rather go to sleep at night knowing that I said the truth. knowing that the truth is coming from a space that I love you. I want to be a part of your success. I want to see you be successful. Skip Prosser said this about coaching. He said that coaching is the most, or the game that we play is probably the one of the most individualized sports, but our job is to try to get 5 individuals to do one common thing. And that is coaching. Like I find myself arguing with myself every single day of like, I'm hell bent on making sure that our guys are not selfish. Like literally, I will fight them when I smell that, when I see that. And Coach Argenal's probably laughing because he knows it's true. Like I will go to my grave literally fighting those guys because it's so important to what we do. You know, if you want to be selfish, go play tennis. And that's not being disrespectful to tennis. It's a one-person sport. If you want to be selfish and you want to do things your way, then go play golf, because it's a one-person sport and it relies on you and your result. But basketball is the most beautiful thing that one of the most beautiful art forms that we know. And it teaches such great lessons. And one of those things is that in order to do or accomplish what it is that you say you want to accomplish, all 5, it's going to be hard. Because if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And there's a reason why if you have a league or a conference of 10 schools, there's only one winner. There's only one winner for a reason. So, again, going back to those words of intentionality, for me as a 47-year-old man, I don't have a problem saying I love you to my guys. Like I tell them that all the time, but I also tell them, hey, you suck. You suck that time down, and they know where it's coming from. They eventually they get over their sensitivity towards it. And they say, man, you're right, coach. And it's like, hey, man, like I used to do the same thing that you did to Coach Williams. Man, he don't know jack. He don't know nothing, but it all comes full circle, especially the more you come from that space and they understand that and they appreciate that, the better off you are.
Yeah, before I talk about Monty Williams and like his incredible story, I do want to piggyback on something Coach Taylor just said about selfishness. I think like one of the things that coaches have to do is really like at the root of everything, and it's really difficult. But you're trying to get every player to be as good of an individual as humanly possible, and then convincing them on Thursdays and Saturday nights to give that away for whatever's best for the team. And I think like those are simultaneously going on. I think that's really coaching. The X's and O's are obviously important, but I think that's really coaching in a nutshell. And if you can get your teams to do that, that's a tremendous, says a lot about who the coach is and what you're doing. Coach Williams' story, I mean, you literally could give that script to a movie producer and they would throw it away, because what he's been able to do in his personal life and the ups and downs and be able to be where he is right now is incredible. And I think when he was captioned saying those things about being on the other side of hard, the thing that actually comes across to me is the delivery. When I watch him, and I'm a coaching geek, like I love coaches and I'm constantly studying coaches from all sports. I'm fascinated by the way that he has this intensity, but it's kind of wrapped up inside of his empathy and his compassion for the players. It doesn't come across like the way that you would like traditionally view an intense, passionate coach. It comes in this like a lot more loving form, similar to like a Tony Dungy in football, and those coaches are really few and far between. And I just have so much respect for not only his words and how thoughtful they are and how smart he is, but really like his ability to have that delivery in that moment and pull those results out of those players, because it comes from a place where those guys know that he genuinely is pouring into them every single day. And it's not just, to me, it's not just the words. You can tell there's have to be so much work behind those on an everyday basis to get to the point where you could calmly say those words and get that reaction. And I couldn't, there is no level of respect I could have that is above what I've been able to watch, like his journey and and what he's been able to do with the culture of the program. And amazing.
So I'll close with wrapping up kind of what Isaac just said there in relation to Dedrique's initial point, where you're trying to get a bunch of individuals to be as good as they can and then give that up on game day for the greater good and to be part of something bigger than yourself. And the guy I work for here one time said it this way, for high school age level specifically, that they have a really tough time reconciling that two things that seem to be in opposition, like Isaac just described, can both be true at the same time. And as you get older, you can see these two things that seem to be opposites can both be true, right? It's the "it depends" motto versus no, it's black and it's white, right? And so I think it's a great way to frame how you should think about these things, right? And that it's not these absolutes. There's so many different versions of gray based on people's experience and how they can then take those words and apply them in their life. So I thank you all for putting that in a way in which you see that through your lens. And I really appreciate you taking the time to hang tonight and be the guinea pigs on this roundtable thing and see if it has legs. And appreciate you guys as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate the possibility of being with this group.